Hey guys, we're going to take a look at a game played between Anish Giri and Magnus Carlsen from the Grand Chess Tour in Croatia. Now these two always produce exciting games. They have been matched pretty evenly for the past couple of years, but recently Magnus has had very good results against Giri. So without further ado, let's jump into this game. Giri had the white pieces and he opened with e4. Carlsen of course played his Sicilian defense. And here Giri played the Rossolimo. Now usually Magnus responds with pawn to g6, but here he decided to play pawn to e6. Giri took, and here he played h4. So just making it a bit uncomfortable for black to go knight g6, since now this is simply met with h5, and black is a bit cramped in this position. So Magnus plays h5 himself, and now Giri plays e5, which is a committal move with the intention of preventing black from advancing his d-pawn. White in turn gives up control of some central squares in d5 and f5, and his pawn on e5 could potentially be a bit vulnerable to a break, say f6. And now Carlsen does something a bit surprising here. He plays d6. So clearly not a positional move, since after the capture on d6, black would be left with very weak pawns on c6 and c5. But this clearly caught Giri by surprise, as he spent a good 17 minutes for his reply, which was to capture the pawn. And now another 20 minutes for the next move, knight f to d2. So Giri clearly wants this outpost on c4. It seems a bit strange to use this knight instead of using the knight on b1, but it does free up this queen to develop. So bishop captures, bishop drops back. Now g3 can be played here, but Giri thought that this pawn wasn't worth defending, since if knight captures on h5, you can simply go g3, and after the knight drops back, rook captures h5. And g3 does weaken the light squares, also this diagonal. For example, if pawn to e5, queen f3, hitting that weak pawn on c6, black can go queen d5 in this position, and black is doing fine. So Giri opted for knight to c3, just developing and taking away this lovely square from black's queen. So bishop a6. Now Giri hits that weak pawn, and Carlsen plays bishop takes c4, inviting Giri to play queen captures c6 with check and forfeit his right to castle. Now the position is roughly equal here. Giri now has to decide where to put his king. So queenside is probably to be preferred, since it would be slightly safer. So bishop d2 is probably a good idea. And if white manages to castle, then he will have the advantage in terms of a safer king. And black's trump card lies with his kingside majority and the ability to create a passed pawn. But here Giri misplaced this. He goes castles short, which walks directly into black's plan of using his kingside majority, and now this will also come with a very dangerous attack. So let's see how Carlsen proceeds. He played knight to f5, just a nice multi-purpose move, freeing up this pawn storm and also eyeing this juicy outpost on the d4 square. Giri played knight e2, so better was to go rook d1 in this position, gaining activity. Instead we have knight to e2, and now this is just a nice maneuver from Carlsen, bringing another piece into the game. Now perhaps it was better to keep the queen centralized, but okay, queen to a4, rook c7, and now rook d7, with complete domination of the d file. And now Giri played c3, very understandable move, hoping to somehow challenge on the d file, but Carlsen now advances swiftly on the king's side with g5. Giri tried rook a to d1. That was taken. And now the best square for the queen, staying very active on this long diagonal with future threats like this knight coming to h4. So the bishop's under attack. Giri played bishop c7, and Carlsen simply continued his advance. Black has a raging attack on the king side. Giri played f3, and now Carlsen simply pushed pawn to h3. White's position is completely ripped apart, and in this position, Anish Giri resigned. So I think the crucial turning point in this game was when Giri opted to castle kingside instead of the more natural option of castling queenside. And from there on, it just started going downhill pretty quickly for Giri. So a very nice miniature from the world champion. I hope you enjoyed this game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.